Once you have gone ahead and created your account, you should come into the dashboard. It should be showing you the dashboard as the first site. Now, if you're not seeing the dashboard, you can always go to the little icon that looks like a person, and you can click on the dashboard. So this is going to give you navigation. When we create spaces, we can navigate to the spaces. If we want to get into some of the tutorials, we can go ahead and click on tutorials. Now they have quite a few tutorials out here. I've gone ahead and clicked in the HTML and started kind of paging through some of these things. Some of the elements that we'll be starting with in this first video are going to be related to HTML elements like heading tags. And we have different types of heading tags that we'll be covering, and we can essentially go through and see that we use tags that are going to begin with a less than, then we put in the heading tag, and then we have the greater than sign, and then we have our ending tag that is essentially going to be a less than with a slash, and then whatever the tag name was that we indicated with the ending tag. So this is going to be how they work. And when we look at some of these tutorials, we can go ahead and try them for ourselves, and it's going to bring in and show us what they look like within the browser. And these are going to be the default stylings for those tags. We also are going to be using the unordered or ordered lists, and we can take a look at lists, and it's going to show us how we can do an unordered list and how we can do an ordered list. When we do an ordered list, it's essentially going to give us numbers, and when we do an unordered list, that's going to essentially give us bullet points. They're going to work similar, and we can see that essentially for an unordered list, we have the tag that starts it with a less than, and then the UL, which is for the unordered list, and then the ending tag. We have list items that we are putting between this, so every item that we want to show up as a bullet point in this case, we are going to proceed with the less than li, greater than, and then we have its subsequent ending tag, which is going to be the less than slash li, and then the greater than tag. We can go ahead and test it out. It's going to show us what that looks like. We can also come back and we can come down to the ordered list, and notice here the only difference is the beginning tag. The list items are the same between the unordered and the ordered list. It's just that first element that changes out, and once the first element changes out, then we would have the ending tag reflect what we have there. And it gives us a little bit more information about how to do some of these things in each of the tutorials. Now, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time going through the tutorials. We're just going to start working on our content for our HTML pages and try to flesh it out. And we'll start by creating one of our spaces. So let's go back and let's click on our head. We'll go to the spaces page where we're going to create our first space. Now in our case, we are going to just be using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We're not going to need to do the full stack development. This is where you're going to do the front end web work, and then you're going to have something that's running on the server side. We're not going to do that. We're just going to use the basic template here. So we're just going to go ahead and browse basic, and we are going to go ahead and start with a blank HTML structure. So this is going to be blank. We have the technology that we're using, and we need to provide a name for our space. When we name our space, we have a few different rules that we have to follow. We can't use any special characters, so that means we can't use the pound sign, the exclamation mark, colons, or anything along those lines. The only exception is that we can use a dash. Your name typically is what we put in that, for example, but once we create that, we cannot change the name of it. So that means that we need to put in something that is going to be meaningful and is going to remain. We can only specify something that's going to be 3 to 55 characters. They can have letters, they can have numbers, and we can have hyphens as we indicated. So I'm going to make mine Jennifer-Kunkel, and then go ahead and create. And when we create this, this is essentially going to give us the means of how we can access the page as well. So we're going to go ahead and create that blank structure. It's going to go through the process of creating it. And now we essentially have a starting README file that's going to tell us a little bit about everything that we need to potentially do here. This is going to be for our index.html, the default page for our space. We also have a style.css that's going to contain some of our styling, and we'll get into that in subsequent video. And we have script.js. We're not going to be doing any JavaScript, so we're really not going to be touching this file here. We're just going to leave that one blank. We are going to go ahead and click on the index.html. In this video, we are primarily going to focus on this. We'll be looking at our styles.css in a follow-on video, but what we want to do now is take a look at some of the HTML and CSS portfolio page requirements, because we want to go through and include some of those and at least get them in our page. We'll work on styling them later, but we'll get them set up for the styling in a follow-on video. In the first part, we have a section that's going to be at the top of our page that's going to have text. We're going to have a section down below that's going to have different images, and we'll be taking a look at that later, but we're just going to be focusing on the content that's going in that beginning section. And this is going to be things where we're going to include our name, major, and year that you anticipate graduating in the top section. So we can go ahead and for our H1 tag, we want to put our name. Then we can use H2s, H3s, paragraphs, etc. So the major, and if you're not taking a major at Rock Valley, you can put something in about what your focus is here, and then essentially the year that you're taking the class. And then we're going to also later on have a short sentence or two about what you hope to do with your degree, or in the case of you're just taking the class to gain more information, how you expect to use this class and the material that you're getting from this class. And then we also want to include an ordered list or an unordered list, and we kind of talked about that just a little bit in going through the tutorial stuff. And this is going to have 3 to 5 list items that essentially cover what you learned in this exercise. So those are the things that we're going to be including from an HTML perspective in our content. And then you can go ahead and continue on in subsequent videos where we're going to continue to style them out and then also put in our pictures. So in this case, let's go back to our W3 spaces, and we are going to go ahead focusing in on this HTML page. And the very first thing that we want to do is where we have the title, we want to change that blank template to be something that's more specific to our project. If I would go ahead and run this, and in this case, if I run it, it's just updating this. It doesn't show me the same type of information that is going to be shown in the browser tab window. Now, the content's going to give you kind of what it might look like. It may not 100% represent what it looks like in the actual page, but we can always share this out. And if we go into a browser and then paste it in, this is going to give us something. It may ask you to click on something to say okay, but it's going to show us what the content's going to look like in the web page itself. Notice in the tab that it's saying the blank template. So the header, that title, is actually going to show up in the tab for the window that the page is going to be rendered in. So we want to go ahead and change that so it's something more reflective. And I can go ahead and say my portfolio template. I can go ahead and save that. If I go back to my blank page and hit the refresh, it should show me that I have my portfolio template now. If I go back, the next thing that we want to do is we want to work on the body of our document. So this header, none of the stuff really actually shows in the page when I'm updating my header. It's more about how it's showing the tabs. If we had other metadata in here, it would be things like we could put in meta tags for searching. We can do all those other kinds of things. We also have our link for our style sheet that's going to refer to our styles.css that we'll be working with later. But in our body, notice that we have this reference for that script.js that we talked about that we weren't going to be using because we're not using JavaScript. So we want to go ahead and remove that to start. So we're going to only leave in that h1. Notice how the h1 has the tag before the text that we want to show, and it has the ending tag, which essentially is going to be the same thing, but it's going to have that slash in there after that tag. If we forget this, then any other text that we put in the document is going to be in that h1 header tag until it finds that ending tag. So in our case, we want to change this to our name, and I'm going to put in Jennifer Kunkel here. That's going to be something. I could also make it a little bit nicer. I could say hello, comma, my name is Jennifer Kunkel, and I can make it more sentence-like in structure. Then if I decide that I want to say something about what my degree is, I could say something like my degree is that I'm working on, or in my case, I might put in an H2 tag, so this is going to be a little bit smaller than my awesome space is showing now. I can go ahead and say something like, I completed my master's in computer science. Once I have that H2 tag in, that I'm putting in the ending tag as well, I can save my page. If I don't save it, it's not going to reflect my current content. Then I can go ahead and run it. It's going to show us what it looks like here in my window. We can see that this text is a little bit larger than this text. We're not going to focus necessarily on the style or anything like that. What we do want to look at is in the actual browser window, we can see that we have essentially what it looks like, but the page is going to be longer. And when we get into showing images, etc., it might look a little bit different. So let's go back to our page. And in this case, we want to go through and add yet another element. And this is where we're going to add something about what we are doing with our degree. Or if you're not doing a degree track, then you can say something about how you plan to use this class information. And I can say something like, I completed my master's so I could become more knowledgeable as a software architect, and it has enabled me to teach at the junior college level. Now I'm going to make sure that I put that ending tag in, even if my text seems a little long here. I'm going to save this and run it, and I should see that this is a little bit smaller than this. And I can come back in at this point and look at it over here, and I can see that I have all of my text there. Now, one of the other things that we need to do is we need to put in some type of a list. This is going to give us information about what we learned in this assignment. And if you're new to HTML, you may want to put in some things initially as we go through the assignment, but then after we get through with it, you may want to update them to reflect what it is that you're really learning. I can go ahead and say something about starting with an unordered list. I want bullet points this time, so I'm going to be putting in my tags for the bullet points. Within here, I have to put in list items. Each list item is going to reflect one of the bullets. And in this case, maybe I want to say something like, scripting is fun. That might be one. And then if I go to the next one, we can create great pages. This is going to be the LI. And then if I want to do another one, I can say something about the right combination of images can make the page. So those might be the three that I come up with. I can save the content and then I can go ahead and show my list. Now, if I want to use bullet points, this would be the tag combination I would use. If I decide I would rather use numbers, that's going to be the ordered list. So OL for ordered lists instead of U for unordered lists. If I go ahead and change that and save it, now it's going to show me numbers. Maybe I prefer the bullet points, so I'm going to go ahead and change it back to the UL instead of the OL. I have to make sure that I change both of them, and I can save that. Now if I go back to my page, it's going to show me what that looks like now. Now our page doesn't look necessarily spectacular at this point. We'll be making it look a lot nicer when we get into the next video.